So welcome, Karen Kimsey-House, to the UpLevel Podcast.
Thank you. Happy to be here.
Yeah, and we're thrilled that you said yes. And in planning for this season of Leading Through Crisis, Chaos, and Change, I really wanted you to come and share what I said to you, your matriarchal wisdom energy. Because one of the things I'm feeling, and I know many people are, something that our planet needs desperately is that matriarchal feminine energy. Yeah. So what do you how would you describe these times? What the heck is happening on planet Earth, Karen Kimsey-House?
Well, I think what your interpretation of what is happening depends on your perspective on it. For me, I think that something new is trying to come through. And so things are really falling apart. So it's a challenging time. It's chaotic. It's uncertain. There's unrest globally. There's a real tension and differences of ideas about how we want to be together as a planet and as a people. The pandemic sent everything completely sideways. And I don't think we've even begun to really, learn everything there is to learn from that time. So it's a really difficult time. And I choose to view it as sort of things falling apart in order for them to be able to come back together in a new way.
Yeah, I can stand in that perspective. Yeah, most definitely.
Is it true? I don't know. Is it right? I don't know. Are we going to end in 20 years? I don't know. Yeah. This huge experiment called humanity is closed, but I choose to take a more positive and hopeful outlook because it really serves me and it helps me be the kind of contribution in my life that I most want to be. It keeps me on deck,
Keeps you on the deck, keeps you on purpose, being able to serve. Yes. A lot of our listeners will know you and know some of your journey, but will you share with us a little bit? This is a big question, a little bit about how you got to this moment in this context of how did Karen Kimsey-House land in a place in this moment in time where she can really point this conversation and contribute to this conversation because of your lived experience?
Mm. Well, there were two main events that really, shifted my path, I think. Three main events that shifted my path. The first was deciding to leave the theater. I was an actress by training. I was in the theater, not particularly successfully, really struggling as actors do to, take care of myself. And I decided to leave. I'd always said I didn't want to wake up and be 40. That was back before I was 40 and wonder what if. And I saw that I was on the path to do that I wasn't really using all of my potential. So I was in an audition one day and I got up and I was in the, waiting room waiting to be called back and I just left and I never went back. That was the first major event. And that opened up a whole new path of possibilities for me. Okay, well, I'm not going to do that. What am I going to do? And I wound up taking a course in life planning that was offered by Thomas Leonard. And there I met Laura Whitworth. And we became life planners and then we became coaches. And then the second event that really changed my life happened was that I met and fell in love with Henry, my husband. And I became not Karen Kimsey, but Karen Kimsey-House. And I had the worst history of I mean, my goodness, I could write a book about all of the relationship disasters I had to this point. And when I finally found someone that was a good fit for me, I felt like I should go on, national television. There's hope for you all. Karen Kimsey is in a successful relationship. And basically, I just needed somebody who was big enough to really be able to hold me and love me and call me forth at the same time. And Henry has been the wind beneath my wings since we married in 1995. And the third major event that really changed my life is birthing the Coactive Training Institute. I don't travel much anymore, but I used to travel all around the world, and people would come up to me and say in a variety of different, variety of different broken English, how much CTI had changed their life. And I was like, wow, I know. I'm at the head of the line. I'm absolutely not the person that I was when we started CTI way back in 1992. And I think the gift of CTI for me, the opportunity that CTI gave me, was that it gave me a really, really big canvas to paint myself on. I could see myself in a new way because I had so much room to express who I was. So I came to know myself differently. And over the years, out of love and dedication to the work, I, you know, I grew and I changed and I evolved. And then I decided that it was time in 2016, 17 to sit down. And so we have. Now I'm sort of the most retired person in the world.
Well, I want to hear more about that. And I want to pick up from this third catalyst of birthing coactive.
Mm.
So for folks who don't know what this methodology is or this technology, what is your synthesis of definition of what is coactive?
Yeah. Okay. There's two. I'm going to give you two definitions. I'm going to give you sort of the easy to understand definition. The being, active, the doing, a combination of being and doing, the hyphen, hyphen active. For me, the real definition is that it's a technology that empowers people to choose love over fear, to really choose the heart over not the mind is not bad, but to choose the heart, to choose the way, to choose love, to choose connection, to choose being open-hearted, to choose being generous, to choose being, connected and interactive with life versus being afraid and contracting and being small.
So I believe that's one of the ways forward is coming from operating from this technology, co-activating relationships, people, conversations. And what's your perspective for folks that are like literally in war zones where they're in survival mode? How do you speak about this methodology in that context? What's the guidance there?
That's a really good question, because to say, oh, just be positive is so cavalier as to be hugely disrespectful. I think about in Maslow's hierarchy of needs, and at the bottom is survival. And so I think that there are occasions when survival is the most important thing, when you need to put your attention on that. If you can do that without that being all there is, if you can really be in a survival context because it's necessary and because that's the environment you're in, without completely using your sense of your own humanity and your connection to those higher levels, then I think that's the key to being in those really, really dire situations. And it's hard, because everything around you is crumbling and falling down, and it can't help but send you to that constrictive, fear-based place, right? You've got to hang on to survive. And if you can balance that need to survive with whatever measure of open-heartedness you can find, I think that you can walk through those incredibly challenging and different situations without being completely defined by them.
What are some of the practices you use that support you to keep your heart open? And if you are contracting, to expand?
For me, and this is just for me, I think we all have to find our own tools. Nature is the key.
Mm-hmm.
I need to be out walking on the earth every day, and I need to be present to the beauty that's all around me, not just, getting my exercise in. And that sounds really simple, but sometimes it's a challenge. I'm late. I've got this, I've got that to deal with. And I need to really bring myself present to what's happening in the moment and to connect with the beauty of this world. So that's one thing. And I think I mentioned the second thing, which is ensuring that I'm present, to what's happening around me. And my mind is very fast, very busy, and very active, and it tends to run off. And when it's run away with me, it's like training a puppy to sit, nope, sit, come back.
I'm back. Yeah.
Some people meditate. I think that's really admirable. I've never been able to really sit and meditate. I get restless and antsy. And
Yeah.
so I just figured I'd take a walking meditation and I also have a really active yoga practice, which is the place I ground. But I find if I walk into the day grounded and centered and connected to the natural world and to my internal world, I have a much more fortified place to recover to.
So true. Tending to this vessel, the body, our mind, our spirit, so we can move forward from this place. I'm thinking about how many countries you've had the opportunity to go and deliver coactive work. And I know you've seen challenging times. Like the past 4 years obviously have been unprecedented with the back to back to back to back. Well, is there a story you can share with us when you were in a place outside of North America where there was war or real divisiveness, that you were able to use this technology, use your wisdom to support the people to come together?
Yeah. Two come to mind. First of all, I want to just be really respectful. I have never been in any kind of the survival circumstances that people are finding themselves in today. What's happening in Gaza, for instance, is horrible. And I just have so much compassion and grief for the events there. Two come to mind. One, I had the opportunity to lead a coaching series inside a prison system.
Mm-hmm.
And those fellows, they were all men, had every reason to believe that they were failures, that they were broken, that they were the riffraff of our world and being put away because they weren't worth anything. And it took some time for them to be able to tolerate actually their own magnificence, because it was so counter to how they'd been trained. They started off as problem children, they became juvenile delinquents, and now they're criminals, right? They're not really human beings. But over time and over the course of the training, they begin to turn towards that idea that they were actually resourceful and whole. And yes, they did some bad things. And yes, they had to be responsible for them, but that didn't define who they were. And that was a really powerful experience for me, because I saw people in, more dire situations that I found myself in the past, really reclaiming their own beauty and their own wisdom and truth.
Humanity, like they reconnected to their humanness.
That's the right word. Thank you. That was the word I was looking for, their own humanity. And in that, then they were able to relate to each other's humanity, and so much of the aggressiveness and hostility and protectiveness began to fall away. Don't get me wrong, I'm not naive. I don't think that every single man that was in my course was transformed.
Yeah.
But several were. And actually went on inside a prison, get this, and sat for the certification, our year-long certification program. 5 of them sat for that, and 3 of them became certified coactive coaches inside the prison system. I'm really proud of that, and I'm really proud of them. The second situation was when I had an opportunity to do a leadership program in Israel. And this was way before the current tension.
Yeah.
And it's a place in the world that is filled with tension and has been for years and years and years. And the leadership program happened because someone wanted to see, Jewish people and Arab people in the same leadership program.
Yeah.
We were able to have that happen and able to explore some of the, way past their lifetime tensions and come to some sense of alliance and connection. Again, I'm not so naive to think that that resolved the whole problem, because it's a big problem and it has a lot of different parts. But I do think that coming to see each other as human beings and coming to respect each other as human beings, not in spite of, but because of our differences, is a key to the kind of world that works for everyone that I dream of.
I dream of it too. And I know a lot of the people that are listening in, that's what they're listening in for, is how do we be the co-creators of that world? And how do we move from, you described this falling apart, breaking down to this new world.
Yeah.
So let's pull out some of those skills or concepts. Let's get this really tangible for leaders inside organizations or folks who are listening from war zones right now and are in survival mode. What are some of these skills, concepts that you can offer up so that they could try to practice, deploy, introduce?
Okay. So I am going to say right up front that what you won't get from me are tips and techniques, right? I operate much more at the contextual level because I think context is everything. I think you can do 40 different things, but if you're not in the correct context, they're going to have a different impact on yourself and your life. So that's my focus and my area of expertise is context.
Context.
So the first thing I think is critical is to be mindful of the context that you're holding yourself in.
Mm.
If you can practice believing in yourself, believing in your humanity, in your own wisdom and truth, while at the same time engaging with all kinds of aspects of your world that are telling you otherwise, I think that is a big key. That's what these inmates needed to be able to do. They needed to be able to engage with the world that was telling them that they were worthless and not be cut off from it, not be judgmental, not be hostile to it. At the same time, they were believing in their own humanity. And I think that context is key. The more you can believe in yourself, the more you can believe in what you know in the truth of your own heart, the more you'll be able to be present to what's happening in your world and grounded inside yourself at the same time. So I think that's a key one. The second one I think that is really important is to practice holding complexity. There is no black and white solution. There is no one thing that's the better way. Coactive isn't the answer. As much as I believe in it, the answer is multifaceted and complex, and it's our honor to play in this orchestra of change, but we're not the only instrument. So how do you play your instrument as loud as you can and as fully as you can, at the same time, absolutely understanding that you're not alone and that you're a part of a larger thing? Individuality and connectivity or community. And I think that's a practice over time. And it starts with choice. So context, choosing your context, choosing the way that you relate to your world, choosing. And then the third thing would be practice. To practice those two things every day and to use everything that happens as an opportunity to practice. I've been doing some real practicing lately. The political situation here in the United States isn't so groovy.
Yeah.
And I've had to really practice staying conscious and aware and awake to what's happening in my world, while at the same time really grounded in myself and what I choose, how I choose to be in relationship with it. Otherwise, you just get whipped around all the time.
Yeah, and
around by the drama.
And how we can't be effective if we're getting pulled into the drama. So, I'm like, what I'm kind of pulling out from this too is if one can choose a perspective of I'm a learner, I'm learning, I'm going to practice these things, means I'm going to mess up sometimes. I'm going to, in CTI, we used to say, like, take a poop in the room.
Yes.
Right? I'm going to do that. And part of what's unfolded, we've witnessed is cancel culture, people being afraid to speak up, or being just polarized opinions. There's no space for nuance or to hold the complexity. This is a place where I know I'm really struggling with. I see the folks I'm working with struggling with So I love these tips, but what I still don't know is how in this time where it's like you could speak up and share the perspective from a grounded place, from a contextualized place, and then get canceled.
Well, let's take cancel culture for a minute, because it's hard for me, because I feel so keenly that there's something beyond that.
Yes.
That said, I'm going to talk about what's beyond it. First of all, can we fully stand in appreciation of the intent or the energy or the impetus behind cancel culture? Why is it happening? What are we after there? What's going on? Can we stand behind it? Can we stand under it? Can we understand it? While at the same time, seeing quite clearly that there's something beyond that. And we may all have different opinions about what's beyond it. I think what's beyond it is conversation. So I think cancel culture is a way of drawing the line in the sand. No more. This isn't okay. Do you know? I'm not gonna lie down for this anymore. And that's a necessary part of the process, I think. Beyond that is to stand there and realize that you're not going to be tolerating, but you're also going to be curious. What's going on? Tell me more. Let's talk about it. Allow me to repair, you know? Yes. And allow me to engage with you as an individual or as a marginalized population beyond the rules that have been set up. Not that I am not cognizant of them, not that I'm not educated and conscious and sensitive to them, but not dominated or run by them.
Yes. Can you say more about that? That feels really important as a way for us to begin the repair.
Yeah. When something is happening that's oppressive, my closest relationship to it is the women's movement. I'll give that as an example, because I was around for the initial birth of the, women's movement. And I've watched things evolve and change and grow. So what happened? I was in college right in the late 60s and early 70s. And the women's movement was really born right around that time, maybe a little earlier. And I sort of caught the wave of it. We were pissed off. We were furious. We were not going to have it anymore. We were drawing a line in the sand, and men, get out of our way. We were going to do it just as good as you, better than you. We were going to bring home the bacon and fry it up in a pan. You'd never know that a woman was doing it, because we were going to do it so much better than you. So we embodied all of the distorted aspects of masculinity in a seek for power. And that was, I believe, really necessary for us to find our feet. We needed to evolve beyond that into really understanding our own individual power. What is the sacred feminine that we all carry, by the way, that we can bring to the conversation? How do we lead in a way that creates more connection and more understanding and more relatedness, which is the more sort of round aspects of that sacred feminine power? And I think women are just coming into that now. They're realizing they don't have to compete. They don't have to lead like a man. They need to lead like a woman, And I think our world is desperate for that kind of leadership. So I'm really excited now by some of the things that are happening and some of the models that we're seeing. The Prime Minister of
New Zealand.
New Zealand comes to mind. God, what a shining example of that kind of leadership.
Yes.
So it's starting to pop up, right?
Yes.
We were able to move beyond the sort of the cancel culture of men bad, and yet we're going to compete with them, into a more full realization of our power, owning what we as women, or what that sacred feminine has to contribute. I think with all of this cancel culture that's happening now, and all of the marginalized populations that are finally, this is centuries we're talking about here, are getting some light shed on them. Can we not be patient with a little bit of cancel culture as we begin to learn how to respect everyone? And then can we be curious about our differences? Can we be curious and really interested in the differences in our lived experiences and how can we actually grow ourselves as human beings, because we come to understand that life is not just as we see it, that it's a very round thing.
What you're speaking to,
I don't know if that's particularly helpful, but that's what I have to say. It's probably not precise enough or specific enough.
It's very helpful. It's very helpful. And it's one of the reasons why I want to talk to you, when like bringing in the divine feminine piece and the feminine embodied leadership and the evolution of it. You're exactly right. It's so different. I wasn't there at the time where the movement formed. So it's really cool to hear, like, you were there. I could feel the fire in you, just like, this is why we were doing this. Just like right now, there's multiple movements because this is what's required to get us to the new world. And so can we hold that perspective, that context that we're constantly evolving? It's been at a rapid pace the past 4 years. That's why there's so much fatigue, confusion, crisis, chaos, and change. And it's like, can we stay like on the wave? Can we stay with it and trust that it's taking us to this new destination?
I think what you're saying is really brilliant. Rather than trying to resist the sort of the change and the chaos that's happening all around us, can we learn to surface? Because it's only going to happen more, right? Things are not going to like calm down and become sedated as they were in my childhood. So can we learn to surf that wave and not only be patient with ourselves when we lose the wave and when we fall, but learn from it? So we become better and better and better at being agile in a very uncertain and chaotic world.
I have an image of you, because I know you're a yogi, like holding the warrior pose. And it's like, how can we hold the pose?
Yes.
How can we hold the pose? We're being asked to hold a pose. And in that, we're growing our capacity.
Yes, we're being asked to hold the pose and grow in the pose at the same time. That's why I love about yoga, no pose is static. You've got the pose and then you're growing in it. So that's the same thing. You've got the beat on the context and then you grow in it. And how you grow in it is through, failure.
It's through dropping the pose, right? Like you can't keep
losing your balance. Yeah. And then you recover.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. When you were like, it was like a crescendo for me when you were speaking about like where we were headed. I kept seeing the, like, I guess the shadow side, for lack of a better word, like the darkness that is here right now. And so like on the dinner table, whereas before maybe it was like in a cupboard somewhere, but now it feels like it's right here. It's a course. And I still really believe that as humans, we are not competent in embracing that part. And I'm wondering how coactive is a technology to support people to embrace the shadow, the darkness, the emotions, like the wholeness.
Right. Oh, I love that question. Well, of course we're not good at it. It's been in the cupboard, right?
Been in the cupboard.
I think that's one of the reasons that it's out and on the table now. Thank God it's out of the cupboard and on the table. All that darkness is churned up for us to look at and engage with. And until we really learn to do that, life will not be whole. You absolutely have to have the darkness, the shadow, the anger, the frustration, and learn how to surf that wave and navigate it so you can experience the range of humanity without becoming it. Like, can I experience my own heartbreak at what's happening in the world today? Can I experience my own anger without becoming that? Can I, have my observer active enough? And I think that the relational skills of coactive listening, questions, curiosity, really embracing our own and other people's natural resourceful wholeness, really, really viewing humanity as generally good and oftentimes acting in very, very not great ways, So all of this that's up on the table now gives us an opportunity to engage with and practice all of that. And I think the coactive philosophy and the practice, which we do in our courses, helps people start to understand how to hold themselves and be present to the rest of the world at the same time. I think that's the key. Because, I can hold myself and I can hang on to myself and I'm going to be myself and I'm going to be really right. Or I can be like, I don't know, whatever, take me wherever. I don't know anything. I don't really have anything to offer. can we hold the complexity of both? And
Yes, please. Let's
well,
keep.
we're doing it. We're practicing.
We're trying. We're on the mat. We're on the mat and we're trying, and then some of us are bringing the technology to other places, and in hopes it can give them an opportunity to try holding the tension, holding the complexity, holding the paradox. What happens if we don't? What happens if we can't do this?
Are you talking about at the individual level or at the global level?
Both and.
Okay. So I think at the individual level, we are pulled to despair. Without the interrelatedness of our world, we are isolated and alone and can't help but fall into despair, to cynicism, which is just a cancer. Cynicism is such a cancer. And you remember I said coactive was really all about helping people choose love over fear, giving way to a fear-based existence, which pretty much all of the, with respect for, mental imbalances and all of that. But just in terms of looking at human behavior, I think all of the really distorted human behaviors in the world come out of being fear-based.
Yeah.
So that's at the individual level. At the global level, here's the truth for me. I don't think we're going to make it as a species. I really think that it's that important for us to figure out how to stand for each other and underneath each other and learn how to be together as a people with all of our differences, complexities, and all of the complexities of what it means to be human. If we don't get some, not mastery even, but we don't get our toes into the, out of the shallow water of that, we're not going to make it. It will end us, is what I believe.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's why we're having these conversations, because we don't want it to end. And if we don't do this work individually, collectively.
Well, it's like a really good mystery, like you're getting towards the later part in the book and you just got to keep reading because you don't know what's going to happen. I think humanity is walking on the edge of a knife here. We could go either way. We could either transcend into something that we can't even express or explain now because we don't know it yet. Albert Einstein has that great quote about how you can't solve the problem that you're facing from the paradigm in which it was created.
Yeah.
So that's going to happen. Or, this human experiment will come to an end and something else will be born. I try not to be attached as a human being. How could I not be? I'm kind of attached to human beings.
Yeah.
Love them.
Yeah.
And I think that we have the possibility within us to resolve the challenges that we face. I think the possibility is always there. One of the things that I can fall into despair about is the climate change. I can get really pulled to that. And I read this beautiful book called An Optimist's Guide to Climate Change or something like that. And in one of the mindsets, they have mindsets, which I really love because those are contexts. And one of the mindsets is stubborn optimism. Stubborn optimism. Can we be stubbornly optimistic about the possibility for our species, while at the same time understanding and letting ourselves really know that it's not a given?
Stubbornly optimistic.
Yeah. I read an article the other day that they're doing this exploration about creating this giant umbrella in space. A giant umbrella in space to shade the Earth.
Wow.
So that it won't resolve the problem that we're having with global warming, but it will halt it for a time until we can really get our act together. How cool is that? I don't know. Will it happen? I don't know.
Yeah.
But then somebody thought of making an umbrella. The size of Argentina.
That's wild. This is all of the innovation, right? That's coming out of this time. That's another place to look for hope and possibility, is that there is unprecedented amount of innovation happening. And we're going to look back on these times and say that was created then, this was created then, and I was on the wave, or I was trying to get back up on my board, and so yay to that. Karen, what about business leaders who are running organizations, running teams? Like, what's your take on being in that environment? Right? There's just been so much thrown at people leaders.
Yeah. I think it's really important to understand that you're not alone. To let yourself, it's okay as a leader of an organization. I think if you feel a little thrown by some of the things that have been thrown at you, and let yourself connect with your people and be supported, and not be alone. I think that's the best advice I could give. It's hard because if you're a purpose-based business like Coactive, like the Coactive Training Institute, and yet you have a business, you need to perform, and you need to, pay attention to the bottom line. You need to be earning a profit. Otherwise, you're not going to be doing the great work you're doing for very long.
Yeah.
So rather than being torn between the two of those things and holding it as either or, how can you as a business leader stay grounded and creative and use all of your resources, including your people, to understand how those two things come together? Not let yourself be thrown back and forth between the two. It's very exhausting.
We talk a lot about making sure that leaders are resourced. So do they have a coach? And a lot of organizations now, they have internal coaches, they'll hire external coaches, or there's mental health professionals. A lot of programs came out of the pandemic. So it's like, build your team of allies as a leader. It's like essential. That's what I'm hearing you say, because this feeling like I'm all alone. Like, I don't know what to say. Another crisis happened today. How do I communicate about it to my team? You've got people of different religions, races on your team, and you're holding the tension between these are things happening for real time with these people. Plus, we've got a business to run. So resource yourself. What else?
Well, I want to just say another word about resourcing yourself, because there are different kinds of support, and I think all of them are really important. Having shared wisdom about how to resolve some of the specific challenges that you're facing. Being in some kind of a group or some kind of an organization where you could talk about the different challenges that you're facing, so that you can draw on the wisdom of others at your level.
That's great.
And then I think the second thing is being resourced in your own humanity. Nowhere is it more important that you stay grounded in your own sense of knowing and your own truth, that when you're leading a major organization through complex change. So get yourself supported and standing in that place, and develop, and this is the second thing, develop a really strong personal practice that helps you do that. I know from personal experience, when the shit hits the fan, for me anyway, self-care was the first thing to go. And I don't mean, getting my nails done. I mean, attending to and making sure that this instrument called Karen Kimsey-House was grounded, clear, centered. It's actually the most important thing. Because if you start losing your feet as a leader, now you're moving in a reactive place. So everything that happens throughout your whole organization is going to be reactive. You have to gather your resources, ground yourself, look to the opportunity of the time, what is trying to happen, and trust your own wisdom and your instinct. And I don't see how you do that without making sure that you're supported, both strategically and personally.
Amen. That was a good drop of wisdom. And then some. What's on your bedside table or in your podcast queue? What's something that's supporting you, or that you're listening to, that others might want to tune into?
Well, it's not that enlightened, but I'll share about it. I'm into longevity these days. I've been reading Peter Attia and listening to his longevity work. I'm 70. I'm hoping to be around for quite a long time, and I've come to realize that there are certain things I could be doing now that will make that more likely than not, and I'm enjoying doing them. So that's a big thing I'm reading. And I'm also reading a lot of books on the whole marginalization culture, let's see what comes to mind. The body is not an apology from a personal point of view. Uh, uh, um, Caste from a societal point of view, really eye-opening book, and others that I'm not remembering right now. So those are the two sort of areas I'm looking at. I'm also pretty engaged politically, and I'm practicing being engaged politically without being crazy politically, trying to understand and reading books about what's happening in this big, beautiful country called the United States of America, and how I can stand under what's happening now rather than be horrified by it. How can I stand under what's happening in the Middle East? I've been reading a lot about the history there so that I can come to understand more of the why behind all of it rather than just going, oh my God, how could this possibly be happening?
And that's such important wisdom for folks right now. And this came up in other conversations. We need to be doing our research, our reading, right? And not just shooting our mouths off because we have an emotion that comes over, or we see an image that, brings up something. It's like, let's do the research. And I think this is for all leaders, knowing that our words create an impact.
Absolutely.
And right now it's for some people, like, it's dire, the words that we're choosing, and we need to be mindful of that. So that's really good wisdom. And what's like a nugget around, this is such a big topic, but what you've learned as a white woman when you've been doing your research around marginalized communities and opening up your mind to that lens.
Yeah, it's been an interesting journey because it's a paradox. You have to, how do you hold yourself as naturally creative, resourceful, and whole? I am right where I need to be as I am. And at the same time, I have lots and lots to learn. And the journey with this study has been really interesting because there was a period of time where I carried a great deal of shame around being a white female, part of not a more dominant culture, although I'm a woman and, misogyny is everywhere too. And then come to realize that shame was not useful. It didn't serve the conversations I was wanting to have, and instead I needed to hold my identity, white, upper middle class female, in a grounded, clear way, knowing that did not define all of me and it did not define all of my world, but not abandoning it, and saying, well, I'm that I'm worthless. I'm not any good. How can I be a valuable part of the conversation if I don't really hold my own identity with respect? And then from there, educate myself and learn more and more about how I can hold respect more and more, the needs of constituencies that are far outside of my lived experience. I have to investigate and explore and read and educate myself and come to understand because it's not my lived experience. Doesn't mean it's not true. It just means that it's outside of the range of experience I've had to date. So I need to expand my awareness.
It's
But
that
not by abandoning myself, not by abandoning my own identity.
it was the first point you brought in when we were like pulling out, not tips, but the theories. And you said context. What's the context you're holding yourself in?
Yeah.
Right. And so as folks are growing their sensitivities, their awarenesses, being mindful of the context you're holding yourself in as you acquire this new information, this new knowledge of like, oh, I didn't realize I had this unconscious bias because I didn't have that live experience. I'm not going to shame myself for it. I'm going to integrate this new learning and come from this place, create from this place, lead from this place.
Yeah. Practice. I'm going to practice.
I'm going to practice.
I'm going to practice. I'm going to be successful. I'm going to fail. I'm going to learn from my successes. I'm going to learn more from my failures. I think that's what a lot of this cancel culture, going back to that for a minute, is about. We're afraid to fail.
Yes.
We have to fail in order to learn and grow. Now we just don't get to say, oh, oops, I failed. We got to learn from that. But I think that fear of failure does slow us down a little bit sometimes.
Well, one of the things I'm so appreciative about, there's so many things about the work that you co-created with Laura and Henry and have so generously over the years allowed us as students to continue the co-creation. This has been I don't even have the words, but you've been so generous with the birth of it and then allowing other people to take it on. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you for that. And when you look back at this journey at 70, you're young. You're going to be here for a long time. We know that. And now you're studying longevity, you're a yogi. So yay. But from this vantage point, looking back, what are you most proud of?
One thing I'm really proud of is that I'm really proud of our ability to let go enough and allow other people to carry this model and this work in the world. I see lots of really brilliant things is sort of dying on the vine because the people that thought it up are dying. And so it hasn't gone on beyond them. So I'm very, very proud that Coactive is way, way beyond me. I remember I was leading a leadership program in Israel, actually. And it just struck me that, I could go over to the dark side tomorrow. I could decide I was going to become evil and do everything I could to block Coactive. And there was no way I could put that genie back in the bottle. So I'm very proud of that. That's one of the things I'm most proud of. And I'm proud of all of you. I'm proud of all the people. I'm proud of you, Christy, and what you're doing with this work and how creative you're being and of what you're making in your world. Mm-hmm. And of so many people who CTI's life has touched, I take such pleasure in seeing this work expressed in the world, not just as I would have expressed it, but the source of it, and then create from there. That thrills me.
That's the matriarch energy right there, folks. That's why I really wanted Karen to come and talk to us, because I think a way to lead through crisis, chaos, and change is generosity. It's being generous with our ideas, our resources, our community, our privilege, being generous with it so we can be of service and we can help folks in dire situations in a way that, is contextualized. It makes sense.
Well, it's love-based rather than fear-based. Generosity stems from love. Scarcity and holding on is fear-based. So how can we continue to source ourselves from a place of love? And out of that naturally flows generosity. It can't help but.
I was going to ask you for your final prayer in this moment. It sounds like you just gave it to us, but are there any other final words you feel to put the cherry on the top for this conversation for now? We'll keep talking.
Believe in yourself. You're valuable. You're important. You have a part to play in this big thing called the evolution of the human species. Believe in yourself. And in this choosing fear over love, of all the places to choose love, choose it toward yourself first.
Let's breathe that in. Thank you, Karen, for coming.
I'm breathing that in. I need to get it.
Right? We all need to take our own medicine.
Yeah.
And we're going to take Karen's medicine right now and believe in ourselves. And this is definitely part of the remedy of navigating and leading through crisis, chaos, and change. Thank you, Karen, for coming and sharing your wisdom with us.
It's been a pleasure talking with you, love. Thank you for inviting me.